If someone cares enough about a book in order to have a professional, beautiful cover, then they care enough about the inside of the book for it to be professional and beautiful as well. Hey everybody, I wanted to talk about probably my favorite part of the publishing process, and that is book cover design. I want to kind of outline how I go about creating a book cover from start to finish and the process I go through when designing a book cover for my own books. Because I am definitely a book cover snob. I mean, I don't want to say I judge a book by its cover, but it will definitely make me pick up a book that I otherwise would not look at if it has a gorgeous cover. Generally, I approach this from the concept of if someone cares enough about a book in order to have a professional, beautiful cover, then they care enough about the inside of the book for it to be professional and beautiful as well. It's just the same as having a nice website or a beautiful Instagram aesthetic feed. It's not necessarily something that decides on the quality of the book itself, but it will go a long way in helping the reputation of my book. That's not to say that I never read books that I don't like the covers of. If a book is highly recommended to me or I see it mentioned on a lot of book reviewers' pages and people are enjoying it, I will pick it up regardless of whether it's ugly or not. But like I said, a book cover, a beautiful book cover, is something that I will salivate over, and I will purchase a book just because it has a beautiful cover. So clearly I want my own books to give off that sense of beauty when someone looks at it. So today I'm going to talk about how I went about creating this cover right here. Now, I generally am drawn to covers that have a lot of illustration on the front and the artwork is beautiful, because I really think artwork is such an important part of the book cover itself. There are a lot of other things that go into it, but artwork is absolutely where I start. But first, let's talk about where the cover design comes in my writing process. I know that I have read like a lot of authors talking about how they conceptualize designs and titles maybe in the middle of writing their book or even before they start writing their book, but I don't really work that way. I'm almost kind of superstitious about it. So I don't like to think about titles for the book. I don't like to think about the cover design until my manuscript is fully done. Usually once I send it off to beta readers or once it's in the hands of my editor, that's when I have the time to carve out to devote to this creative process, and I have the inclination to, and I feel like it's safe to from my superstitious standpoint. So I will wait until that manuscript is out of my hands, and that's when I start working on this, because I consider this, part of the marketing and part of the promotions for the book itself. So it's kind of a fun extra. It's like adding icing onto the cake, right? So while the cake is baking, I get to start thinking about how I'm going to decorate it. Before I even get into the artwork or conceptualizing the cover itself, I go into this market research phase. And that's really kind of an extremely fun part for me, because I will go to bookstores and I will go on Pinterest or I'll look on Goodreads and see covers that I am drawn to and covers that are trending. Sometimes I'll look for covers that other people are saying are gorgeous. You can look for specific hashtags, and I kind of just go through that whole process and wrap my brain around the styles that I'm drawn to and the things I like in that particular genre that are doing well. Now, that's not to say that if a cover is doing well and I don't like it, I'm not going to go in that direction, because I want my art to be portrayed in a style that I find pleasing to my eye. Because first and foremost, I am writing this book for myself, honestly. If you don't love what you're writing, then you shouldn't be writing it. And I think that's the same with a cover design. If you don't like the cover design, it's not going to accurately reflect what is inside your book itself. So it's a really important part of the entire process. Now, thankfully, I have a pretty extensive background in graphic design and a lot of experience with designing print materials. So I feel like I can go into this with maybe a more trained eye than the average consumer or the average reader, because I can kind of look at these covers and identify certain trends that I personally find appealing or maybe that are working on a larger scale for readers, and I can pull those into the design that I'm conceptualizing. And because I have a background in graphic design, really the only thing that I pay for when I am creating a book cover is the artwork itself, which again, I said is super important, and I take it very seriously when I'm selecting an artist for a book cover. So after I am done with doing my market research and I kind of have an idea of where I want to go for the cover design, that's when I get to start looking for artists that I think resonate with the tone and style that I'm going for. Also, I feel like they could do it justice and have enough experience to create something that would look good on a book cover. For my first book series and for the cover of Echo Through the Stars, I found an amazing artist after looking on places like ArtStation and DeviantArt and even Instagram and Pinterest. I found an amazing artist, and her name is Ali Preswick, and she is so good, you guys. I knew that I resonated with her art style, but also a lot of the pieces that she had in her portfolio were from fandoms that I was a part of. So I kind of already knew that we were probably going to vibe on a level of the things that we like. So I knew that she would probably have the ability to translate my vision into an illustration that works for me and for what I was going for. And that whole process with her was absolutely amazing. After I reached out to her, we did some initial concepts and went from this to this to this being the final product. So it's kind of amazing, the process and the artistic vision. Clearly, it was lovely to have someone who had a lot of experience because I could lean on her for the process of how to conceptualize and arrange items on the canvas that we were working with. And after we went through those revisions, she sent me like the final file. And that's where I come in and I get to use my graphic design skills. I pull the artwork into Photoshop and I will go about deciding on what fonts to use. I always like to use custom fonts, or I will find a font and pull it into Illustrator and manipulate it until it looks somewhat like what I want it to feature for the book. There are admittedly a lot of tenets of graphic design that come into play when I am finalizing the design. Things like balance and placement and shading and color interplay that I feel like maybe wouldn't come easily to someone who hasn't had a lot of time in that field. But in my opinion, the most crucial aspects of cover design are your artwork and your fonts. If those work together and they are well balanced, it's hard to mess up a cover. However, it's really important that a lot of thought is put into these two aspects, and a lot of time is devoted to finding something that resonates with the theme and tone of my book. And once I have those down and I feel like they work together, I'm pretty happy with the end result. I mean, just take a look at my book. I think this pretty accurately represents the tone of everything that is going on. You can immediately tell it's action adventure. You can see 3 moons in the background, so you know it's sci-fi. We've got a really cool illustration on the front of our main character, so we know it's a female-centric story. And just from the style, you can immediately tell this is a YA or new adult book. Even the fonts and the overall color tone does a lot to convey the genre and what the reader is going to be getting into when they pick up my book. And this has also been an interesting concept because I've had to think beyond book 1. I didn't do that when I designed book 1, but now that I'm further into the series, I've got to think about how books 2 and 3 and any other books I'm adding to the series are going to work with that first book cover design. So if I could go back in time and give myself some advice, I would be thinking about that when I designed the first one, because you've got to think about elements like color cohesion, the sizing of the fonts and the illustration size and placement, and how those are going to work across multiple books and still feel fresh and new, even though you're maintaining certain elements. That is one of the defining characteristics of a series design, is that you'll have things like a new title or maybe new colors, but they will keep specific lodestars that help solidify that cohesion through the series. So you will have maybe the fonts be the same and the same size, and maybe the main character illustration will be the same size, but it's going to be a different character or multiple characters. but you will have enough similarities that you will see book 2 or 3 or any other sequels in the series and know immediately that it belongs to that series, because really you're branding it, you know. I have to think about the brand of the Echo series and what that looks like farther down the line. And I think that I ended up with something that looks pretty damn gorgeous. I mean, look at this. I am so proud of this book. I mean, and I put a lot of work into it, and I had a great team to work with to create it. And I will be the first to admit that when I went through this entire process with my first book, it was terrifying and nerve-wracking because, like I said, for me, covers can make or break a book. And I wanted this book to be able to compete with anything else in its genre. So it was very important for me to have a book that I personally found was beautiful and that I knew other people would respond to. Covers are certainly not the be-all end-all of a book, don't get me wrong, but they're pretty damn important. So in this process, I just had to learn to trust my skills and my eye for design and trust the people I was working with, trust my illustrator and my artists, and just move forward with the process as best that I could. And now that I've been through the process once, it really doesn't seem so scary anymore. I mean, it's still a heck of a lot of work, but it's not as terrifying as the first time. I'd love to hear what cover designs are your favorites. Are there any books you adore, but maybe you think the cover design could be a little better? I mean, it's really fascinating to think about the relationship of cover design and how a book reads or the quality of the book inside. If you enjoyed this video and maybe found some value from it, make sure you hit those like and subscribe buttons so you can stay up to date on everything new that I'm going to be putting out. And thanks so much for watching. I hope to see you guys next time. Bye!